Well, at ease, paratroopers, and welcome back to the Enduring Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, retired Army Staff Sergeant Kevin Kidder. Friendly reminder, this is your last week to get your taxes done. If you're a last minute filer, you're in luck because this episode is supported by Drake Uplinger of Uplinger Tax Services. Drake is a CPA and a CFP, helping individuals and businesses navigate tax strategy and financial clarity. You can find more out at uplingerts.taxdome.com. That's UPLINGERTS dot TAXDOME.com. Today's conversation is one that a lot of you are going to feel. I'm joined by Dean Huard, retired Army logistician, former city manager, and a leader who has spent over 3 decades serving both in uniform and in his community. This episode isn't just about what he did, it's about what happened after. See, we talk about transition at every level: corporate to military, military to civilian, leadership to uncertainty, and even navigating health setbacks. And through all of it, Dean shares a simple but powerful framework: build yourself first, unite your tribe, and serve others. And one message that stuck with me the entire conversation is good follows grief. If you're in transition now or you feel like you're rebuilding, this is the episode for you. Here's my conversation with Dean. Let's get into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is someone I connected with through LinkedIn, and right away it was very clear we share a common foundation, which is service, leadership, and continuing the mission beyond the uniform. Dean Huard is a former U.S. Army leader who's been serving his community in a new capacity through public leadership, and we kind of got a little bromance on LinkedIn. We help support each other, share each other's posts, comments. We help each other get our messages out there. And Dean, I appreciate you being here.
No, I appreciate the opportunity and the mention of bromance. So I'll be sure not to tell my wife that.
My wife's listening in the other room right now. She's giving me a little giggle right now.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, well, awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
As many of you know, I like to start the conversation with a question from a book that Brett Ledbetter wrote. It's called 365 Questions to Get to Know Yourself and Your Team Better. I met Brett last year in April at a conference in Los Angeles. His breakout session was The Art of Asking Better Questions. And he had a chance to plug his new book, which my kids got me for Father's Day. And it's something I've used to kind of get the wheels going for the conversation. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You pick question number 185. And I really like it that no one's picked this yet. Much of Brett's questions are 2 parts.
Okay.
Yours is no different. The first part of yours is, what are the dangers of praise? What are the dangers of criticism?
Dangers of praise, dangers of criticism. Well, obviously the answer, or answer could be with praise is just to not get too full of yourself. Because I think once you're down that road, and I think it's just a really important aspect of leadership is, you have to be willing to do what your soldiers are doing, what your employees are doing. So yeah, I think first and foremost that you have to be a leader that is not cocky, not arrogant. That you need to be willing to do what everybody else is doing. And then so criticism, was that the other one?
Correct.
I don't know. I think criticism, too much criticism, just keeps you in your box. Just keeps you in a shell. And something that we may talk about later is imposter syndrome. Like if you and some of us that transition from the military, I think that's a trap that you definitely don't want to step in. So if there's too much criticism, you don't want to step outside your shell. You don't want to do things outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And the second part is, which of those has had a more harmful effect in your life and why?
Well, it's funny. Growing up as a kid, my mom would joke because we would joke with the family that I could only get one compliment a day because she really thought that maybe as good moms do. Like they don't want you to get carried away with yourself and be, cocky and overly confident. But I think for me personally, it goes back to falling into that trap of imposter syndrome, that you lose confidence if you're criticized too much. And it's funny. There's a video going around on social media that I've seen that talks about it's an interview with Barack Obama, and
Hmm.
he talks about the importance of feeling like you belong, and
Hmm.
how he grew up, as a community developer years ago, and then when he became senator, he realized that the people that were at the table, that were in the room, uh, and this is his expression. He's like, they're just folk. They're just
Hmm.
everyday people that have been exposed to, uh, to people at that level in those rooms. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but hopefully it does.
Oh, it certainly does. I would agree with criticism as being more counterproductive in my life. It really did create that imposter syndrome. And I love that you talk about your mom because I like to start off with you. Tell us about Dean. Where'd you grow up? What was life like before you joined the military?
So Dean grew up as a Coast Guard dependent, Coast Guard brat. I was born in Los Angeles, and my dad was a warrant officer in the Coast Guard. He came in during Vietnam era and stayed in 26 years later. But we started in California, went to Connecticut, Virginia, went to high school in San Diego, and then they had one last duty station to go to in Oregon. So looking back on it, I probably could have stayed in San Diego, because where we lived was pretty cool. So I lived at the Coast Guard Lighthouse in Point Loma, and
Oh, wow.
um, and so hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, because I tell this story a lot, unfortunately, where went to high school in Point Loma, and graduated in 1986, and that was the year that Top Gun was filmed in San Diego. And it was so our house was Viper's house in the movie.
Wow.
And it was funny because people are like, well, why would you ever leave that house? And I'm like, well, it was Coast Guard housing, and it was military housing, so it was time to go. So I left, and so I graduated from high school, followed my parents up to a small town on the coast in Oregon called Coos Bay. Well, actually, North Bend. So I lived in North Bend, but the big town next to it was Coos Bay, and spent 2 years there. Went to community college, and I really found that you can make a big difference in a small town. And
Mhm.
the things that I did there, I could have. I don't say I could have never done in a big town, but let's just say that the competition would have been a lot greater.
Mhm.
So I interned with a local congressman. I was student body president, and so I did 2 years there. Transferred to the University of Oregon, and then came back to the coast. Spent a few years there. Went through first life event where I went through divorce, and then I moved back to California. So that's what I did as a young person.
Okay, love that. Just no big deal. Name dropping the Top Gun movie. When you first told me that, I was like, "That's so cool!" Like that's one of my favorite movies. I've watched it at least 100 times.
Yeah.
Um, Very cool. Um, what was the catalyst, or how did you? What made you join the military and specifically the army?
So really, it was just service. I mean, I wanted to lead better. I wanted to learn how to lead. I had done it, when I was 20, 21 at the community college, and it was really nothing that like my dad, gave me this wisdom and said, you should serve as well. That's one of the great things about my parents and my dad was that I never felt really forced to do anything. They just really wanted us as kids to be happy, and to find purpose in life. So yeah, so I decided that I would enlist and join the army, and so I went to the University of Oregon, a very very politically progressive college, and to say the least. So I enlisted in 1989, right after, I guess it was right during the Cold War, and then so then went to basic training, and that took care of the first 2 years of ROTC. So came back, decided to do ROTC, and then got commissioned in the Oregon National Guard, and became a second lieutenant, and really almost got out of, really almost got out because I was a quartermaster officer, and the unit in our town was engineer.
Mm.
And Kevin, if you ask my wife, she'll verify that there's not an engineering bone in my body. And but my father-in-law was a civil engineer, so
Mhm.
and I'm nothing but I'm nothing about that. So anyway, I did the Oregon National Guard, and then did the reserves. Transferred when I went back down to California to the reserves. Unit got activated. Spent 2 years stateside at Fort Leonard Wood, and our mission was to train IR soldiers that were going into Iraq. So did that. Was a battalion XO, and at the time, job wise, I was working as a pharmaceutical drug rep. I did corporate sales in Palm Springs, California, and so I come back from that 2 year experience, having had left the family, and told my wife, or asked my wife, that I would like to keep doing this full time. So I had 13. It was 13 years Guard and Reserve time, and then this was what, 2004, 2006, and then I come back and I'm like, yeah, this is something I want to do full time. So the rest was history from there. I came on what was called the Call of Active Duty program,
Mm.
and first duty station was Fort Stewart, Georgia. And I'm not sure if any 3ID listeners out there, but I was a dogface soldier. Listened to General Lynch, and he's spoke at one of our balls and said, we're here to make memories. It's all about making memories. And that was a pretty poignant time in my life because, honestly, Kevin, I just wanted to serve. I mean, I wanted to find
Yeah.
some way to serve, and I left the corporate world. Came on active duty. Told my wife, and she's told the story a couple of times. Rather dodge bullets in Iraq than be in the corporate world.
Mhm.
So that was my call to duty after 9/11 was to come on active duty full time after that, and I stayed in 21 years of active duty after that, and ended up with 34 years total. Retired 3 years ago.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, and it's from most of the get. It's very atypical, which I love. You were a grown man with a family, a career,
Yep.
and I love that you said you'd rather dodge bullets in Iraq than deal with corporate America. I feel that. Um, and then, I just love that you're so patriotic and you had desire to lead, and
Yeah.
you thought the best vessel would be the armed forces, and that's just a testament to your character. When you look back at those 34 years, maybe the first few years in uniform throughout the career, what stands out most about who you were then versus who you became?
Well, I think who I was then, obviously young, impressionable, and very, very, I'm not going to say very naive, but, and it's funny, I joke with the younger folks on our staff and the job I'm at now. And I always ask folks, have you seen the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
Mm.
And they're like, nope, never seen that. And I'm like, well, I think that movies like that, I think, formed, or they kind of reaffirmed, my personal belief in service and leadership, and so I'm probably not as well. I'm probably as altruistic, but maybe not that naive because since then, obviously I've had 34 years of leadership in the military, and still very, very altruistic, but post military, in transitioning out into my role as a city manager, and now my role as a consultant. It's yeah, it's not as it's not as altruistic as you may think it is. Even though the role I took in becoming a city manager and is very altruistic. Leadership gets very difficult and very messy when you have six bosses. So as a
Hmm.
city manager, and that was the role I took. When I first got out of the army, I was a city manager of a very, very small city, 2,600 people, very, very tactical. And so the experience I had on active duty was, I was a '05 lieutenant colonel doing strategic stuff in Poland, Germany, Southwest Asia. So when I became a city manager, my tactical world became I'm going to say even more tactical than when I was on active duty because I was the guy that was wrapping the pipes at the park before a freeze. I was the guy that was handing out checks to the pony ride guy at, when our city had like a big event. So yeah, I mean, your definition of leadership, I don't want to say it changes, but it definitely morphed a little bit into becoming a tactical leader, maybe young, into a strategic leader, and then back into a tactical leader, if that makes sense.
That does, and that's got to be quite a journey. Um, as a staff sergeant, my everything I did was tactical.
Right.
I didn't get to go up to the operational or strategic level. And
Yeah.
here you are, you're operating in Europe, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia at a very strategic level. But then you come back down to, quote unquote, a battalion size of a town of 2,600 people. Was it difficult, or did you find enjoyable to be back on the tactical side? Writing the checks and taking care of the parks before it got cold.
It honestly was challenging, and maybe that was probably a little reflection time, but that was probably some of my downfall. But I personally thought that I thought based on those examples I just gave you, I thought I was being tactical. Uh,
Hmm.
but but again, it's difficult when you have six different bosses. When you have, a mayor and five city council people that have different ways of how they want you to perform. And I think I went into it very, very altruistically, with that sense of because I'm not the first veteran that became a city manager, and from a leadership standpoint, I personally just wanted to serve again in this different capacity, but I probably was not prepared for for all the different tactical parts of the job.
Okay. Um, for those that maybe aren't well versed in municipality leadership or local governance, what is the role of a city manager?
So it's interesting. And I'm going to define it here in a second, but it just made me think of a story that when I went back to Fort Hood, where I retired out of, I would have people come up to me and go, "Hey, what's it like being the mayor?" And I'm like, I'm not the mayor. So a mayor and the city council are in charge of they're in charge of policy. So the city manager is the one that is really doing the staff work. And the best analogy for military listeners, I think the best analogy is my last role on active duty was I was a brigade XO. So
Mm,
I was a chief of staff. I was in charge of multiple different departments, and that's how I kind of sold myself when I was looking at positions as city manager. Because the way I described it was, I've done the job. Like because I was in charge of HR department, finance, but to cities, it kind of looked the same, but it wasn't. I mean, well, from a structure standpoint, it was probably the same, but the detail wasn't there, and the specifics weren't there because it was different departments. Cities get their
mhm.
funding from property tax, sales tax, franchise fees, what have you. And like on my resume, it says I was in charge of $307 million on a federal side, but but the budgets are just done differently at the local level.
Hmm.
So, so again, as a city manager, you're in charge of all the different departments. Your job is to make sure that that those services are delivered, to use a military term, on time, on target, and that you know you're also in charge of the contracts for all those different services. But it's similar in that if you have a large staff, you're in charge of people. Like you manage, motivate, mentor, all those different subject matter experts, yeah, just like I did on active duty. So, but again, going back to mayor and council, they're in charge. The city or the mayor is my boss. The city council members are my bosses, and my job is to make sure that that all those city services are delivered effectively. Yep.
That's awesome. I love how you kind of connect being a brigade XO with the city manager. What did you learn about people, whether soldiers, civilians, or families, that influences your ability to lead and connect and you know, run a staff and report to influential people of the town you work for?
Well, I think the main thing is always keeping it in perspective that everyone's there for the right reason. You know, and
Hmm.
I thought this on active duty too. That you know people, soldiers, you know, raised their right hand and said, you know, that they wanted to serve, and so you have to keep thinking that with your soldiers that they came here for right for, you know, for the right reasons. So the same thing with a city councilor or mayor, they're there to serve their communities, and especially from the staff perspective in local government, because I personally equate a city staff member to really like a soldier on active duty, because they're there for the right reasons. They're not getting paid, you know, these exorbitant salaries, and and local government staffers are there for the teamwork, the camaraderie, and in general. And it's interesting because, like, when I first looked at, you know, what to do when I got out, or even back in the day when I was in college as a political science major, you know, I was so in it. But that, going back to the whole Jimmy Stewart thing, you know, I looked at the Capitol
Hmm.
Dome, and I was like so enamored because, oh my gosh, you know, uh, it's just, you know, that if you want to get things done, that's what you do. But I was really not in tune with all the different layers of government. You know, there's federal, state, local, and what's interesting is, back in the day, I got accepted into this degree program called Planning Public Policy Management, and it was basically just, you know, the degree public administration that you needed to become a city manager. But back then, I was very enamored with red and blue politics, because my first job out of college was managing two campaigns for the state legislature, and so I thought that, you know, that I was going to go do legislative assistant work, and then, you know, maybe go run for office someday. But what I should have realized, that I realize now, is that if you really want to make a difference, you're going to make a difference at the local level,
Hmm.
you know, much much better, more succinct. I forget what the word I'm looking for, but the bottom line is that, that's where government works its best.
Yeah.
Is because, you know, and it's not sexy, but it's, you know, making sure that the roads are paved, trash is delivered, yeah, your kids got a park to play in. That is, you know, that really is government at its best.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, we've got gubernatorial stuff happening or has happened.
Mhm.
The seats are coming up for votes. You know, all the talk is there. But I think you said it right. It's not sexy, but it's local governance. What would you say to somebody who has an interest but doesn't know how to get involved in uh,
Well,
their local
yeah,
governance?
it's funny because I do a lot of mentoring. I mean, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed since I got out was, you know, because there were so many veterans that did it for me. Marty Hughes, Darren Tangeman, the list goes on and on. Just former, former Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines that made that transition. So when I was coming on board, they did just some great things for me. I mean, just they were there. So, case in point is when I separated from the city, I immediately got on the phone and started calling my veteran friends. I'm like, okay, I didn't think I was going to have to go through this as soon as I did, but to tell me what I should be looking for. But um, so I just think it's important to mentor others. And so I would say if they're interested in local government, I would go to the ICMA website,
Okay.
which is the International City Manager Association. But every state also has their own city manager association.
Mhm.
And I'll make this pitch too, make this commercial. It is not, local government is not just for the retired 05, 06
Mhm.
that wants to go be a city manager. Every job that you did on active duty has a local government, what's the word? A local government translation. So if you were a signal person, soldier on active duty, you go into IT. HR to HR, finance to finance. There's and again, it may be a little bit different, a little different nomenclature, but if you want to serve in local government, there's a way to do it. If you're leaving active duty, you want to go local government, obviously, get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, kind of thing. But there are plenty of resources out there that will help you translate translate exactly what you did on active duty.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, what a great. I love how you did that. Like, if you did it in the military, it's also available in your local government. You just might have to, God forbid, do a little research,
Yeah,
uh, put your best foot forward for a hot second.
right.
Was this something you knew you wanted to do, like as your time in uniform was coming to an end, or was this kind of an opportunity that presented itself?
Well, I'm not sure if there was uh, any kind of epiphany or big cloud of smoke or anything, but I don't know. I think I logically just kind of, well, like I mentioned, my degree was in political science, public
Mhm.
administration, and I was trying to find the right fit of, okay, I want to serve. I kind of knew what I didn't want to do. Like I didn't want to do federal work. I didn't want to do GS work because I wanted to make a difference more at a local level. So I decided, I think I did find the ICMA website online. But then one of the things I did was whenever I was TDY, I would fly to like Fort Irwin, and I would go to the city of Ontario and talk to the local city manager there. I'd go to Fort Carson, and I found a buddy Darren Tangeman that was city manager of Woodland Park. So I started this process very early, and that's what you should do. When you're getting ready to get out, is start that process early,
Mhm.
obviously, but just start talking to people. Start
Yeah.
networking with. And here's the deal, Kevin. Like nobody says no. Like
Right.
if you call somebody and like, hey, I'm a active duty, I'm a guard, reserve, whatever, and I want to get into local government. And even if it's corporate, it doesn't matter. Just call somebody up, do the LinkedIn connection, and just ask. You would be surprised because I think there's a lot of people out there that as they get more senior in their life, they do want to give back.
Yeah.
They do. They're interested in legacy. They want to do good for the younger generation. And I'm not very young, but my point is like when people are transitioning out, especially a service member, I think they really want to help people get to that 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 next position.
Yeah. That's such a great point. When I first got on the LinkedIn 5 years ago, I hated it. It was bunch of gatekeepers. It sucked for me, so it has to suck for you. And that culture, at least in the last year or two, has really changed. But listeners, like you can't be afraid of the no, right? At
Yep.
some point, somebody's going to say, no, that's okay. Just, shift fire, lift fire, move on. But eventually, someone's going to say yes because inherently leaders want to lead. They want to help. And playing to people's vanity. Hey, you have something I want. You're doing something I want to do. Can you teach me? Like, what
Yep.
officer NTO doesn't want to hear those words? Oh man, you're looking to me. Yeah, let me bring you into my fold and help you out. Like, that's such great advice. Um,
Well, and to your point, about not taking no. I just made a post the other day on selling and how veterans uh, that everybody sells. And
mhm,
so there's a picture there of obviously with a little AI help, but there's a picture of a veteran and then same guy and in uniform and a guy next to him in a suit because one of the other jobs I had after I came back from when I left Oregon, went to California, was I was a recruiter, not in a army sense, but I was a corporate recruiter that placed junior military officers coming off active duty, and it's actually where I met my wife, who she wanted to get into pharmaceutical sales, and that was one of our industries, one of our companies. But my point is that I had a real hard time trying to convince officers coming off active duty that they sold, that they actually that they sold, and they're like, no, that's
mhm.
not for me. That's not what I do. I'm like, you do. Like you sell concepts and ideas on a daily
Yeah,
basis. And what's interesting now is, and I don't think it's just LinkedIn, but it's interesting now looking at like senior officers that get out and they accept my LinkedIn connection, and maybe they didn't even know me on active duty, but now they're in business development, and so and it just I don't know it just makes the world go around.
it
Everybody
really does.
sells to some. So that's that's what my post was about was that everybody sells, and even on active duty, and you're in the guard reserve, it doesn't matter. You're selling concepts and ideas to your commander. If
Mhm.
and I think I give the example that if there's a operations order that you don't particularly agree with. That your commander wants you to accomplish, what are you going to do? You're going to go to your people, your soldiers, and you're going to sell it, like it's your own. Because if you don't,
Yep.
then you're not meeting commander's intent. And then if you look at a course of action brief,
Right. That's what I was thinking.
it is a sales presentation.
Mhm.
It is gathering intelligence. And there's so many different correlations there. It's gathering intelligence, and that's competitive analysis. So yeah, I get a little frustrated when people are like, "Well, you've been in the military and you don't sell." No, yeah, I had a very unique advantage because I did corporate sales before I came on active duty. But even when you're not, just because you didn't get a formal class in it, well, and looking back on it, like we just said, you probably did in that
Yeah.
course of action brief that whole MDMP process.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, like if you're a younger soldier, if you're enlisted and you're not sure if it applies, get on ChatGPT, get on Gemini, and ask it. Say, hey, this is my rank, my position. I've attended, BLC, ALC, SLC, MLC, whatever.
Yeah.
Have I learned any sales or marketing skills? And it'll tell you. Like you can. It's a great tool to help translate what you do in the military to make it applicable in the civilian world, because that honestly for me has been the biggest gap, is translating military service to the civilian service. Luckily, I'm at the point where I've started my own business. I'm writing my book and trying to do all this on my own. But yeah, the first 3 4 years getting out was wildly difficult, writing resumes.
Well,
Did you encounter any challenges in that realm, or in another instance after you decided to retire?
so I was just gonna, I painted. I was just gonna mention that because I painted this rosy picture of what Uh, so the bottom line is you still have to sell yourself, and you may
Hmm.
have to sell yourself even more so as a veteran going into local government because, and quite frankly, I still had that same issue even as a former city manager because, admittedly, the city that I had was small. Most of the services were contracted out. So I reverted back to a lot of my leadership experience on active duty to qualify me for these city manager roles.
Mm.
And I was, I think, moderately successful. I was a finalist, semifinalist for a lot of positions. But to answer your question, yes, it is. That's when that's where the selling comes in, because and the people that I mentor now, like I meticulously go through their resume and I look and I'm like, is there something here that looks like you did city work? You know what I mean? Like you have to
Hmm.
paint the picture as much as you can that and then I mean speaking of getting into local government, I always say to them too, like you need to be able to articulate that that you did something that is relatable. So, like one of the things that I did was one of my deployments was I was a deputy sport operations officer. We deployed to Kuwait, and this was 2015, and our mission when I literally was on the tarmac, our mission was to retrograde equipment coming out of
Mm.
Afghanistan. Very simple, very rote, and then literally while we're waiting, we get an email from the unit that is on the ground and they said, "Hey, change of mission. We now, because of the president signed a $1.5 billion, I think it was called ITEF
Oh.
mission, where our mission was not to train the Iraqis, but our mission as logisticians was to set up 5 mini bases that I put on my resume as mini cities because that's what it was
Hmm.
to ensure that these cities had exactly what they needed, life support. So we had to contract out a lot of that with different defense contractors. But again, I tailored that for my resume so that it looked like I was doing city stuff.
I love that. That's a great way to identify. I mean, if you are, sergeant first class, and you were fob mayor. Um,
Mm,
if you're in the garrison staff,
yeah, definitely.
that's the akin of a town hall for um, your city and town nearby. That's great. You mentioned Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and I love the Jimmy Stewart story. A lot of people may or may not who listen may not recognize that he retired as a brigadier general of the
I
Air
know.
Force,
Yeah, it was
and
during World War II.
he struggled significantly with post traumatic stress,
Mm.
and portraying his character in It's a Wonderful Life was very cathartic and healing for him. And I know you've mentioned, and to whatever extent you're comfortable with sharing, but you've dealt with some health crises and setbacks, and have had to display some significant resilience. If you don't mind sharing that, I would
No,
love.
not a problem. It's kind of like we talked about initially. This is a little bit of therapy for me. I mean, just a little bit, only because. So the transition that I went through after active duty was was pretty tumultuous, to be honest with you, because and personally, I was not expecting it because I thought I planned it out pretty well and thought that I thought that my transition into back in the civilian world was going to be I'm not going to say easy, but I thought I had it all figured out because
Mhm.
I did corporate before I came on active duty, and I thought I had all the skill sets that I needed to be successful. So I got the position that I wanted. I became a city manager, and then as I said earlier, I had kind of a bumpy road, and then ended up separating from the city. And this was in I'm sorry, in April May of 24. And the craziest thing, I'm actually at a baseball game for my son that played baseball all through high school. Well, even before that, 14 years, travel ball and all that. But we were at a tournament in Bryan College Station, and Kevin, I woke up and I knew something was wrong. So I said to my son, "Hey Colton, what time is it?" And he said 6:15. And I said, "Okay." So then I think I was just sitting on the bed, and then he comes out again, and he must have thought something was wrong. And he said, "Hey Dad, what time is it?" I said 6:15. How come you're asking me again? So uh, he knew something was wrong. So long story short, my wife works for the American Heart Association,
Mm.
and uh, and so anything medical, like we always refer to her, because we both were in pharmaceutical sales, and I got ready and got in the elevator, and he hands the phone to me, and I started talking. I guess I have no idea what I said, and then she basically said, "Call 911. He's having a stroke."
Wow.
So, but it's interesting because looking back on it, like I really thought that I was still good. So, because I mean, I physically felt fine, but I knew that what I was saying wasn't being conveyed.
Mm.
He couldn't understand me. I couldn't understand him. So the ambulance shows up, takes me to the hospital, and come to find out, I had a 6 millimeter clot that went to my brain, and the portion of the brain that controls your speech. So I got reeled into. I was there at the ER, and then luckily, and the phrase that they use in stroke world is time is brain.
Mhm.
So they were because the stroke happened when it did. I was in the window where if they got me to the hospital in time and they gave me a drug called TNK, which is tenecteplase, the clot would have been dissolved. So, but so they gave me the drug. I got put into the operating room to have the clot removed manually. Doctor looks up on the screen and he's like, "Oh, clot's gone." So the drug worked. So that's that was phase one of the operation, Kevin, because I left the hospital 3 days later. Still don't know why I had the stroke. Perfectly healthy. They determined that fancy word, the cryptogenic, that there's absolutely no reason why it happened. So 3 days later, I'm back home and I'm feeling a little tingling sensation on my left side, and went back to the hospital. Had a TIA, had a mini stroke. And from that, they ran a bunch of different tests, multiple MRIs, and determined that I had what was called a PFO, which is, and to be honest with you, I can't remember what it stands for. But bottom line is there's a hole uh, uh, between chambers of your heart.
Mm.
And so, and it's supposed to close at birth. And a third of us are walking around with this open, with this opening in our heart. So the PFO procedure that I had, it was supposed to close that hole in my heart. Not how I got the stroke or what caused a stroke, but that they think that's how the clot came into my
Okay.
brain. So I had the procedure, and from that, I got a DVT, which is another clot, and I got sepsis. So I ended up
Jeez.
in the hospital for 10 days with sepsis. And I got to tell you, the that was worse than the stroke because
Mm.
the stroke, basically was taken care of with the tenecteplase, and I still have some, residual effects from the stroke, but not to the degree that I did with the stroke with the sepsis. So that was my that was my health crisis, and then all through that time was still unemployed. And I ended up I have a couple of pictures too, still in the hospital interviewing for jobs. So that I was still dealing with the whole unemployment issue even while I was going through all the health issues.
Wow. A lot of people would use um, so much devastation in such a short amount of time as a reason to quit or throw in the towel. What kept you fighting? Mentally, emotionally, what kept you going?
Okay, so that's a loaded question because I've obviously done some thought behind that, and we've talked about possibly writing a book about
Hmm.
everything that I went through in that period. But then I struggle with the book scenario too. It's like, is your story good enough or strong enough to write a book about? But to answer your question, I did come up with this phrase that has kind of stayed with me and is a theme that I think that I would put in the book is that what I discovered was that good follows grief. That after every and I could even go back to the day that I lost my job, that something good happened after that. And I gave a talk to at Texas State, and I did a presentation on it, and again, I laid out like, okay, lost job. Uh, so financially, that's a big deal. But we sold our house, so we had a little bit of padding there. Still unemployed, but and then with the health crisis, it was, oh, I had a stroke, and what's crazy was the hospital that I was at, St. Joseph's in Bryan. It was that they had the only what's it called, cardiovascular interventionist or neurological interventionist within a 10 county radius there that day that was able, or else I would have been either life flighted to Houston
Hmm.
or taken an ambulance to Houston. So um, so again, I could go on and on, but it's again every event that happened, um, and then with the second TI with the TIA, they ran all those tests and figured that I had the PFO. So without that TIA, I wouldn't have figured out I need a PFO. I'm still not confident as to what good happened after the sepsis. I'm joking, but honestly, being in that hospital taught me that there are so many people that have it worse than you do, and and I still, like I said earlier, I struggle with, okay, like, is there enough for a story here? Because like as we know, there's so many people that have gone through so much more through conflict and war, but I think what gives me solace is that there are people that do need to hear your story,
Hmm.
and you've written about your story, and I really think that veterans and anybody that doesn't feel like they have a story, I don't think that's true because
Right.
um, everybody that everybody has a story. That there doesn't have to be something traumatic that happened,
Hmm.
but everybody has a story. So to answer your question, I think I really was just good. Good follows grief.
I love that. That's such a great way to think about things because it really is a pattern. Good and then grief, and it can ebb and flow just like the ocean. Um, when you look back, did that chapter teach you anything about faith or family or mortality?
It did because obviously you need well, yeah, because so an acronym that I've developed that I might use for the book is BUS, and I know it seems very simplistic because if I write a book, it's not going to be one of these. I've got a new model or new algorithm for leadership. It's just very, very simple. I really think that B is build yourself first, because and I've had this conversation, and I think we even talked about it a little bit, that the Army teaches you how to lead others,
Hmm.
but I don't think there's a lot, and maybe I didn't read the books very well, but I don't think it really helps you with how to build yourself.
Yeah.
How to become, and I think that building yourself is so important when you transition out. And for me personally, like, I thought I took a lot of time because it's more than just the tap class, doing that. That is just a complete check the box. It is really finding time to um, establish you, establish your values. And it's not just like, sitting under a tree and self-actualizing. It's just, I don't know, just like understanding for you what's important, what your values are. And then the second one is the importance of uniting your tribe.
Hmm.
That really hit home for me, especially not so much with the health, because that's important because your family's going to be there, your friends are going to be there, but when you're going through unemployment, and it's just you and that computer screen every
Hmm.
day. You're on whatever website for whether it's LinkedIn or I was on this TML Texas Municipal League site every day. Trying to find the right opportunity. You really depended on, and for me it was a lot of veterans that had gone in local government that that they were there for you. Like they were texting me, calling me, hey, there's this opportunity. Have you thought about doing this? So yeah, I think uniting your tribe is just imperative, important. And then the S is service to others. And service to others with, and I'm just going to add this too, with civility,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I did over this last year was finding the importance in what I call micro work. Micro work is okay, I'm unemployed, but there are things that I can do to not just fill my day but make me feel productive. So that for me, that was I did a couple podcasts. I did some writing. I wrote an essay on civility that's going to be in a book called Lead with Civility. And so, writing, speaking, I spoke to a couple classes, and it just kind of it gave me value.
Yeah.
It made me feel it didn't give me job purpose, but it gave me purpose to to want to do the job applications on a daily basis because and then like you got to go, you got to get out and meet people, network.
Yep.
um, my wife, it's funny, like I would go meet people at like a local coffee shop and just like a coffee working, and she's like, oh, you're going to Vivel crepes, and she's like, is that so are those crepe dates, are you calling those crepe dates? But anyway, going back to the service thing, I just think it's important that the more that you're doing for others, the less your pain, your misery. It'll definitely get you out of that phase.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the most apt things I've heard in a while. I got a chance to speak to some student athletes at Grand Canyon University last week,
Yeah.
and it was a leadership class, a lot of fun. I think the first session had 50 kids, the second session had 30. They were dialed in, engaged, asking questions. They wanted to learn more, and it wasn't work for me at all. I got to talk about myself and um,
Yeah.
present my thoughts on service and leadership and the struggles with identity and purpose and connection that not only veterans deal with, but seniors, they're leaving college, they've been a student their whole life, and now they have to go to the real world and kind of show them, just because it's my book and stuff is tailored towards the military, the same principles apply when
Oh,
when
completely.
you lose those connections from the collegiate world and step into the new world. So it was great just to be able to give back even just a little bit.
Well,
Yeah, that was.
I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it, but those life transitions, happen to your kids.
Hmm.
I think you and I talked a little bit offline about my son that played baseball his entire
Yeah.
life, and 14 years we were doing here, there, and everywhere, all over the state of Texas, doing travel ball, and then gets on the gets well he we left from a 5A program to a 6A program, and gets cut his junior year, super competitive, and becomes the manager, and then makes the team. And yeah, he had opportunities to go to a couple colleges, like some smaller Midwestern schools, but Bottom line was it was very difficult to watch him go through those transitions, but I tell you, the character that he built will last him a lifetime because, and you don't obviously, you know, it's important as an adult, you go through these struggles and you're like, well, maybe as an adult, you know, I thought I was done with going through all that transitional struggles, but no, you're just, you know, you just continue on that road of trying to find the best, you know, the best way out of it and try to learn from it. And then when your kids go through it, you know, in the background, you're like, I hate it, but you
Yeah.
kind of want it for them because it's just going to help them be better people in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I remember I was stationed at Fort Bragg and my son was in middle school. He tried out for the middle school baseball team in sixth grade, made it to the last day, didn't make it. Heartbroken, devastated. Um, and I was just like, half of me was furious for him, but the other half was like, oh, I'm glad you're getting your heart broken now.
Yeah.
This is a good lesson. And, there's, as long as you get your kids involved in sports for the right reasons, which are learning how to be a good teammate, how to put others before yourself, how to
Yeah.
compete, how to dig deep when things get tough, not because you want to be on the coolest AAU or travel team or you're living vicariously through your kids. Then you have a problem. You probably should seek therapy. But if you can get your kids involved in sports because they learn how to control themselves, their emotions, all the positive benefits, winning and losing, because
Yep.
those all translate to every season of life. If you can be a gracious winner and a gracious loser, life gets a little bit easier.
Well, and that's what I said when he was as a senior. He was on the team. You know, he wasn't playing as much as he would like. But I tell you, well, it's funny. Funny story. I'm sure you know the catcher from the Cardinals, Yadier Molina.
Of course, yeah.
So he shows up to town with his son and his nephew, and you know they had played you know all their lives, and they were really good too. So it was that level of competition, and but Colton's story continued because he got an opportunity to go play for a JUCO in California, and it's funny like well, we had family in California and we're like oh this is going to be great, and so he shows up and the first week he's like you know what I don't want to play baseball anymore, and it's
Mm,
so you know we get him to that level and then all that work all those years, and then honestly Kevin it was like harder for me than it was for him
right.
because you know you're the one that's taking them there and you know throwing them balls and batting practice and all that, and then it was like more emotional for me, and it was probably one of the best things for him because he's home now. He's actually doing like real life stuff because he
Yeah.
that whole time that he was doing baseball couldn't get a job, so now he's doing the barista thing, and I don't know. I just think it's great. So he's all those lessons he learned from baseball he translated them to or transitioned them over to his first job. So it all happens for a reason.
It really does. And I will, people say die in certain hills. Baseball to me is the sport that replicates the most life experiences than any other sport.
Yeah.
And you brought up Yachty. He did such a phenomenal job as the manager for Team Puerto Rico during the World
Oh
Baseball
yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see him take on him and Albert will probably be major league manager soon. But there's a video of him. I think it was his last year, right before he retired. He was working with the bullpen catchers and he was in full gear, literally hand wrapped around the shoulder of another catcher, showing him what to do with the glove. And I'm like, that's how it's done. Like,
Yeah.
that's what leadership is. It's not, I'm the greatest catcher that's ever lived. I'm not going to show you anything. It's, I'm the greatest catcher that's ever lived. I want to teach this. I want you to carry on, the Cardinal legacy. This is how we play ball. And this is how you carry the position. And he's just a phenomenal human being. And I know you and I are both baseball fans. I just had to bring that up.
Huge. Yeah.
Um, After everything, the army, the transition, the health battles, what would you say has given you the best perspective on gratitude and maybe legacy?
Well, I think that's a lifetime of character.
Mm,
Character events, and it's been really important, I think, um, to um, to reset, refocus, and to reflect. That's been one of my biggest lessons learned over the
mm,
last 3 years is to since my transition out of the military is I don't know I just think you get caught up with the schedule, and even
yeah.
in the job I'm in today, it's and I remember commanders would just complain about oh, my calendar is just, it's killing me. And I'm like, okay, but you need to put some time in there for you. You
Hmm.
really, I'm like, you control your calendar. It's your calendar. So just simple things about, and it wasn't just going through the health crisis. Although being unemployed, like you have a lot of time to yourself,
Yeah.
but you need to, sit and reflect, and that starts, I think, for me with having a morning routine. you
Yeah.
know it's um, it's different for everybody, but it's coffee, reflection, uh, read a little, and then work out, because you need to start that day on a positive note, and it doesn't need to be noisy. It needs to be quiet, and that way you can go face the day. So I think overall it's reflection, and part of the reflection part too has related to possibly writing a book is I really wish I would have written stuff down. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I I
Yeah.
I, and I kick myself because I've got I went to our storage unit the other day looking for all of my little green books that I had through Iraq, and um, and I did post this on LinkedIn, that when I was in Iraq in it was '07, '08. I actually jotted down some advice for the kids,
Hmm.
and they were just super young, and so like 15 years later, I had to retype it out because my handwriting's so bad, but I retyped it out and gave it to him and sent it to him. And it's interesting because like the things I talked about um, were relevant for today.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of things um, just how to be better people, how to be a leader, how to treat your mom, just real simple things. But I think those were just food for thought, words of wisdom, dad's advice that I think was that translated to from yesterday to today. But what's interesting now that I think about it is that it um, being in Iraq, you have the time to think
Yeah.
and reflect, and so I just that the it just it's real important to reflect and and think about things.
Yeah, you're spot on. I love the saying that control the day before the day controls you. If you start the day off with some intentionality, maybe some reflection, some prayer, some meditation,
Yeah,
whatever, get your body moving. It's empirically proven that getting sun on your face within the first 15 minutes that the sun is up will do wonders for your mind and your body. The power of writing things down. I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, Ryan Pote, former naval aviator. He's now an author. Um, he had some pretty traumatic stuff happen, and uh, it was a cathartic release for him to be able to write down his experiences, and then he named those experiences and created characters, and those experiences and characters are kind of what served as the foundation for his first book and now his second book.
mm,
Same thing happened with me in my book. It was a 4-day bourbon night fueled. There's this beast under the surface that has to get out, and eventually it became what it's become. um, and I love that you say it's your calendar. Like if you're the boss,
yeah,
it's your calendar. Maximum 3 to 5 things you should big important things you should exercise brain power on.
yeah.
Everything else, delegate.
Well, it's funny because like I remember seeing because as an XO, I would prepare the calendar for the commander, and and they would always put like executive time on their calendar, and I always
Hmm.
wonder, like, oh, I wonder what they're doing in there, for their executive time. And I think good leaders, the general officers that I worked for, they were, I'm sure they were, taking the time, reflect, so that they could, be strategic, think big thoughts.
Yeah. Who? Oh, I'm gonna. Who was the man during World War II? Oh,
Marshall, like,
yeah, Thurgood Marshall. So,
no, George Marshall.
yeah, George Marshall. So
Yeah,
he left the office every day at 5 p.m. There
yeah,
was a great article written on him. He left the office every day at 5 p.m. and he was in charge of all U.S. Armed Forces during World War II.
yeah,
And he knew I don't have the mental bandwidth to sit in my office all day. The problem is going to be the problem tomorrow. I
yeah,
still need to be human being and get some rest. So leaders, like if you're listening, if you're stretching yourself thin, like pull it back. It's okay to, take a knee and pull security and drink some water for a hot second. Like
yeah,
you can't do everything all the time. Um,
definitely.
what does legacy mean to you? At some point, we're all going to leave this earth, and um, we. I often wonder what people will say about me, so I've been a little bit more intentional. But what do you want legacy to mean for Dean?
Well, I think as you get older, you need to be intentional about it, and actually
Mhm,
think, what having a legacy means. And for me, it's having people throughout my life that that when you peel it back, they look at me as somebody that, a was, when it comes to family, it's a good father, good husband, good friend. That's the basic. But then the people that you spent a good majority of your time with, professionally, that that they respected, looked up to you, and appreciated the fact that you took the 10 minutes to actually mentor them, to actually have a conversation with them.
mhm.
And what's interesting about the mentor thing, and kind of related to, I guess, imposter syndrome, is most of my career was at the staff level. I wasn't battalion commander, brigade commander, general officer, and I think sometimes you think as a staff guy, gal, that well, no, that leader, not leadership, but that mentoring thing is for those that are in those green tab
Mhm.
leadership positions, and nothing could be further from the truth. I
Yeah,
mean, and I think, and I've thought about this over the last couple of years, that the mentoring needs to happen in the middle. Like
yeah.
you need to be good and confident enough to know that that as a staff person, you're leading, you're managing, you're leading those people too, and so it's your responsibility um, to actually mentor them as well.
I love that. Um, one of my favorite Bible verses is 2 Timothy 1-7. For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self control. So if you're hearing negative thoughts, it's not him; it's the enemy, and that a lot of that um, imposter syndrome, especially if you weren't in a key billet, right? So if you weren't a green leader,
Yeah,
green tab leader, or even in the civilian world, if you're not in a quote unquote managerial or leadership position, there's very few people who are. Most of what happens is in the middle. And you have almost a moral obligation if you have experiences, if you have knowledge to share it. And I love mentorship because it's a relationship that is asked for um, either up to down or down to up. A mentor could say, I see a little bit of myself in you. I'd like to mentor you. Or someone could say, you're in a position or a phase that I would like to be in. Would you help me get there? Requires a lot of trust. But yeah, if you're not, you don't have to be in a named position to have influence and to be a mentor for others. I think that's a great point.
no.
What advice would you give to senior leaders that are getting ready to transition out of the military, or maybe they already have, but they're having um, you know the, a shaky start?
I think, and I probably alluded to it earlier, but is obviously take the time. And I know it may seem kind of trite, but people will say, that you can never prepare early enough. And I think that's
Mm.
true. And I did that. Um, and so just because you have a perfect plan, and I still remember this day, like I had a poem, written out on my PowerPoint. These are all the time hacks. These are all the benchmarks that I need to do. Here's all the classes I want to take. And I think, what's the phrase? The best laid plans go to waste. First enemy
Yep.
contact or something. So
Yeah.
when you actually are out there, yeah, the plan's going to change. So I guess be okay with that, and be okay with. Well, I talked about my story about going from strategic to tactical, but I think that is that's a very important thing to remember, is that, especially as a senior officer, like you may be the one that's doing the PowerPoint.
Hmm.
You may be the one. So, you may not be the one that's wrapping the pipes at the park in preparation for the freeze, but there's a good chance that you're going to be more tactical than you were in your Army career. And that's just my, my thought. And again, kind of regurgitating what I said earlier, but take the time. Take the
Yeah.
time to reset, reflect, and it shouldn't take a stroke. It shouldn't take something like unemployment that happens to you, that you don't take that time to figure out who you are, what you want, what your values are, and if you already got that figured out in life, then more power to you. But I spent a lot of years, guard, reserve, active duty, thinking that I kind of had it figured out, but I don't think I did. Like I really, well, and simple things like, and maybe it was because I wasn't in a command role, but I didn't know what my leadership philosophy was. Uh, but
Hmm.
but I took the time to write it down, and I would say that too. Write it down, journal all these thoughts that you've had for years. Put pen to paper, uh, and then lastly, you need to network. You need
Yeah.
to get out of your comfort zone, because you did it on active duty. You did it while you were in the military. You did things that you would have never thought that you would have done before. So you're going to be challenged again. So, and one of those ways you're challenged is to network. Um, Figure out how to meet people that you have never met before. You need to ask. Ask for the cup of coffee is the bottom line.
Mm, I like that. Just the power of ask. I love that. And finally, I hate that the conversations come to an end because this has been really helpful for me, and I know it's going to be helpful for the listeners. But what's one message you would want our listeners to take away from your story?
Okay, again, I'll probably sound redundant, but the message is that good follows grief. That you can go through whatever life gives you, and maybe I'm just now figuring out at 58, but I think I had this mindset all my life, and it's really what kind of got me through it. But yeah, but you have to have that philosophy that good follows grief. When I was in the hospital with sepsis, and I was able to walk around, I went room by room looking at people that had it a lot worse than I did.
Hmm.
And I think that's the philosophy that we all have to have, is that a good follows grief, and it's just important that, and you learn that by building yourself first, uniting your tribe, get that network established, and having a real service first mentality, that that you will be successful.
Absolutely. Dean, this was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and um, just being gracious and patient and vulnerable enough to share your story with us.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. And if I could, that word vulnerable just made me think of when I did give a talk to the city of Pflugerville about decision making, and that because that was part of my micro work. I had the city manager afterwards in tears say to me, "Hey, thanks for being vulnerable."
Mm,
And at the time, it seemed a little weird to me, but reflecting back, it is important. I think that you open yourself up, because you never know. Like there's somebody listening to this right now that and hopefully does help other people, but you just never know. You opening up about your issues, things that you've gone through, it's gonna help somebody else.
absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Wow. Dean, I appreciate you, man. That was real. And those are exactly the kind of conversations people need to hear. If you're listening right now and something in this episode hit home, don't just move on to the next thing. Sit with it for a minute. And if you know someone who's going through a transition, whether it's a military, career, or just life in general, share this with them. This is the kind of message that can actually help someone. And if this conversation resonated with you, please check out my book, The Invisible Veteran: Rediscovering Purpose, Identity, and Connection After Service. You can pre order your copy now, and if it helps you, pass it along to someone else who needs it. It's available on my publisher's website, ballastbooks.com. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Walmart. If you pre order the book, shoot me a message. We're doing something special for early supporters. Also, again, last reminder, this is the final week to get your taxes done. Thank you again to Drake Uplinger, founder of Uplinger Tax Services, for supporting this episode. Drake is a CPA and a CFP, helping individuals and businesses navigate tax strategy with financial clarity. You can find him and more out at uplingerts.taxstone.com. If this episode resonated with you, you're not alone. Transition is hard, identity shifts are hard, healing is hard. None of that has to be done in isolation. Reach out and make sure that whoever you're reaching out to is a fountain, someone that's going to pour into you and that they're not a drain. Initiate or have that tough conversation, take the first step, be the leader in your own life. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with a friend, leaving a review, or sending it to another veteran or leader who might need to hear the message. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, YouTube, and Amazon Music at enduring underscore mindset underscore enterprise. Check out the website, www.enduringmindsetenterprise.com. You can find out more about the business, the podcast, the book, and our nonprofit arm, the Enduring Mindset Foundation. This has been the Enduring Mindset Podcast, reminding you that your past may shape you, but it does not have to define you. Until next time, onward, forward, fall out.